The stars were calm that day, silent and peaceful, as if the whole galaxy was asleep. But deep inside Terran territory, a strange tension moved through the air like a slow storm. Human patrol ships drifted near the borders, watching the distant darkness with quiet caution. For many years, no one dared to cross into Terran space. Every empire, every alliance, every kingdom in the galaxy knew the warning, do not enter, not even by mistake. But the Galactic Empire, proud and powerful, never liked warnings. Commander Ryland stood on the deck of the Terran patrol ship Vigilant Star. He looked at the holographic map floating in front of him. A single dot blinked on the edge of the border. At first, he thought it was a glitch. But then the signal grew stronger, bigger, and more impossible. He stared at it, confusion slowly turning into shock. That can't be right, he whispered. The sensor officer checked again and swallowed hard. Sir, that's a fleet, a very large fleet, approaching fast. Ryland took a long breath. The Galactic Empire knew the rules. They knew humans did not give second warnings. Terrans did not bluff. So why were they coming? Nothing made sense. Ryland watched the enemy ships on the map multiply. 1, 5, 20. Then entire formations appeared like shadows crawling from the deep night. These ships were huge, thick armored, and armed for full war. The sensor screens shook as if they were struggling to compute the mass of the approaching fleet. It was too large, too organized, too intentional. They're not passing by, Ryland said quietly. They're entering on purpose. Everyone on the ship felt a cold wave move through them. Terran space was legendary. Stories said humans had fought gods, defeated ancient machines, and destroyed civilizations that tried to invade. Humans were peaceful and less threatened, but once pushed, they became something else, something the galaxy feared. But none of that stopped the Empire. On the far side of the galaxy, inside the Empire flagship, Lord Admiral Kavos watched the Terran border grow on his screen. His ship stretched across the stars like a metal storm. He stood tall, confident, certain of his superiority. Everyone knew the Empire ruled half the galaxy. The Terrans ruled only themselves. What threat could humans be? Kavos smiled. Begin entry. He ordered the fleet cross the border. Back in Terran space. Alarms awakened system after system. Satellites spun toward the intrusion. Automated defenses activated. Old vaults opened beneath planets where no human had walked in centuries. The Terran network pulsed like a living mind, sending one message across all human space. Unauthorized entry detected. Prepare for conflict. Commander Ryland felt the vibrations inside the Vigilant Star as the ship armed itself. Terran ships always felt alive when danger came close. Metal plates shifted like muscles tightening. Energy lines glowed brighter. Engines hummed deeper. Ryland opened a channel to Terran command. Empire fleet breaching border. Numbers unknown, no. Too high to estimate. Requesting immediate reinforcement. Static crackled for a moment before a calm voice replied. Request acknowledged. Reinforcements en route. Hold position. Observe. Do not fire unless fired upon. Ryland nodded, but he could feel his crew's fear. They knew the Empire could destroy planets. They knew humans were strong, but no one knew how strong. The Empire had never forced humanity to reveal everything. Ryland watched the enemy formation grow on his screen. The ships moved with slow confidence, like predators entering a forbidden hunting ground. They think we're weak, he said. They think we're just another species. The communications officer looked up. What if they attack first, sir? Ryland didn't answer. He wished he knew in the Empire flagship. Admiral Kavos felt pleased. Terran space looked empty, unprotected. Only small patrol ships floated around. No giant fleets. No war machines. Just silence. They fear us, Kavos said proudly. They hide behind warnings because they cannot fight us. An officer hesitated. My lord, the old reports say humans defeated the Zerati swarm and destroyed the Omega Mine. Kavos cut him off with a sharp glare. Old stories. Human propaganda. We are the Empire, and this territory will be ours. He raised his hand. All ships, advance. Maintain full formation. The fleet pushed deeper. Back on the Vigilant Star, Ryland felt his heartbeat grow heavy. The Empire ships were now close enough to see with the naked eye. Massive metallic giants moved through the darkness, engines glowing like angry suns. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. His crew watched the windows in silent terror. The sight was overwhelming. The sensor officer trembled. Sir, they're locking weapons. Ryland closed his eyes for a moment. The Empire had made their choice. Prepare shields, he said quietly. If they fire, we respawn. Outside, the darkness rippled as the Empire ships charged their cannons. Light gathered across hundreds of colossal weapons, ready to unleash fire strong enough to tear the stars open. Rylan whispered, "You should have listened to the warning." The Empire fired. A blast of blinding energy cut through space like a spear. The first shot of the unexpected war had begun. The blast from the Empire's cannon moved like a burning comet through the empty dark. It was bright enough to turn the viewing windows of the Vigilant Star white. Alarms screamed through the Terran ship as the energy wave rushed toward them with deadly speed. Commander Rylan braced himself and shouted, "Shields to maximum." The ship's protectors flared to life, glowing blue as the incoming strike crashed into them. The impact shook the entire vessel so hard that several crew members were thrown to the floor. Panels flickered, lights dimmed, and a deep metallic groan echoed through the hallways. For a moment, it felt like the ship would split in half, but the Vigilant Star held firm. "Shields at 60%, the sensor officer reported with panic in her voice. "But we're still alive." Rylan steadied himself. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "They fired first. That means we answer." Outside, the Empire fleet kept advancing with cold, steady precision. Their ships moved like a moving wall of steel, spreading into attack formations. More cannons lit up across their hulls, prepared to fire again. Rylan stared at them through the viewing glass. The Empire believed humans were weak, that Terrans were only good at throwing warnings into the void, that they had nothing to back it up. "Transmit message to command," Rylan ordered. "Terran ship under attack. Permission to engage." The reply came back faster than expected. "Permission granted. Defend Terran space." Those words settled over the ship like gravity itself. Rylan raised his hand. "Target lead destroyer. Fire when ready." The Vigilant Star responded instantly. Terran weapons hummed with a strange, deep resonance, a sound that felt more alive than mechanical. Energy lines along the ship's hull brightened, then burst forward in a sharp beam of white-blue light. The shot sliced through space and struck the Empire destroyer directly across its front plating. The impact was strong enough to throw the massive ship off course. Metal plates ripped away, spinning into the void. The Empire vessel began to burn. The Terran crew watched in shock. They had expected to scratch the enemy ship, maybe damage it slightly. Instead, their single strike had nearly broken the destroyer in half. Rylan's eyes widened. Even he had not expected that level of power. So the old stories were true, he whispered. The Empire fleet reacted instantly. Hundreds of ships turned their guns toward the small Terran patrol vessel. They couldn't believe what had happened. It was impossible for a smaller, lighter ship to deal such damage inside the Empire flagship. Admiral Kavos leaned forward in disbelief. "What weapon was that?" he demanded. "Unknown, my lord," one of his officers replied nervously. "It does not match any design in our records." Kavos glared at the burning destroyer. "Humans should not have that kind of firepower. Double formation lines. Crush that patrol ship, now." The order spread across the fleet like a harsh wind. The Terran ship suddenly faced a wave of incoming energy blasts. Hundreds of streaks of light shot across the dark sky, each one powerful enough to tear through a cruiser. The space around the Vigilant Star became a blazing storm of fire. Rylan shouted, "Evasive pattern Delta. Keep moving." The ship dodged left, then right, twisting through the incoming fire. Bright explosions lit the space around them as several blasts narrowly missed the hull. But one struck the rear section and threw the ship sideways. Sparks burst from the ceiling as panels ruptured. "We lost rear shields," the engineer yelled. "Hull damage on decks 7 and 8. Rylan held onto the command chair to steady himself. His mind worked quickly. They were outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched in size. But Terrans didn't survive by being bigger, they survived by being smarter. "Activate shadow mode," he ordered. The crew froze. "Sir, that's a restricted protocol," the officer said. "I know. Activate it." The ship dimmed. All lights turned dark. Engines shifted to a low-frequency hum. For a moment, it looked as if the Vigilant Star simply vanished into the darkness. To the Empire sensors, it actually did. Inside the Empire flagship, officers scrambled to locate the Terran ship. "We lost visual. We lost sensors. It's gone." Kavos slammed his fist on the console. "Find them." The Vigilant Star drifted silently behind the Empire cruisers. Shadow mode made the ship blend with space itself. No energy trace, no electronic signal, almost like a ghost. Rylan's voice stayed steady. "Lock weapons on the nearest cruiser." "Full power, full power?" his weapons officer asked. shocked. We could tear the ship apart. Ryland looked at the enemy fleet on the screen. Exactly. The Terran vessel reappeared behind the cruisers for only a split second, long enough to unleash a devastating blast. The beam tore straight through the first cruiser and then punched into the second one behind it. Both ships exploded in a bright sphere of fire. The Terran crew stared in awe. 3 enemy ships down in less than 5 minutes. But this victory did not calm Ryland. In fact, it worried him. If one small patrol ship could do this much damage, what would happen when the full Terran fleet arrived? Out in the distance, a faint light flickered, then grew brighter. More ships, larger and more powerful, emerged from hyperspace. Terran reinforcements. Ryland breathed out slowly. About time. But the Empire didn't wait. Their fleet turned, forming a massive attack line. They were preparing to fire everything they had. Ryland realized something important. The real battle had not even begun. The space between the two fleets felt heavy and silent, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Terran reinforcements continued to appear in shimmering bursts of light. Their dark metallic ships unfolded from hyperspace like silent giants waking from sleep. These were not patrol ships. They were warships. Old, powerful, and mysterious. Commander Ryland stared at the growing Terran formation. Even he had not seen some of these ship classes before. Their hulls glowed faintly with strange patterns, like ancient runes. Power radiated from them in waves. His crew watched with wide eyes. Sir, I didn't know we still had ships like that. Ryland shook his head slowly. Neither did I. The Terran reinforcements took positions around the vigilant star, forming a protective wall. They moved smoothly, without panic, without hesitation, like a force that had fought too many wars to be afraid of another one. But the Empire fleet did not back down. Inside the Empire flagship, Admiral Kavos glared at the new rivals. He had expected resistance, yes, but not this. Not such a large, disciplined force waiting calmly on their border. How did they summon these ships so fast? One officer asked, voice trembling. Kavos did not answer. His jaw tightened as he studied the Terran formations. Humans were supposed to be simple. He muttered, simple people with limited technology. Another officer swallowed hard. My lord, these readings don't match any known power output. Their ships look ancient, but they are strong, very strong. Kavos raised his chin, refusing to show doubt. Ancient ships break easily. Prepare full volley. We will break their line before they activate any more tricks. The Empire fleet shifted, spreading its wings like a giant bird preparing to strike. Thousands of glowing weapons pointed at the Terran armada on the vigilant star. Ryland felt the shift. They're going to fire everything, he said. All weapons. His crew stiffened. Shock turned to fear. But Ryland did not panic. He had fought too many battles. He knew fear only clouded judgment. He opened a channel to the Terran flagship, a massive ship at the center of the reinforcements. Shaped like a dark, floating fortress, this is Commander Ryland of the Vigilant Star. Empire fleet preparing full attack. What are your orders? A calm, deep voice replied. Hold position, Commander. Stand by for coordinated response. Understood. Ryland turned to his crew. Brace for impact. The Empire weapons brightened across the entire horizon. The darkness of space turned red and gold as thousands of cannons charged to maximum power. The sight was almost beautiful, like watching a sunrise of fire. Then the Empire unleashed it. The space between the fleets exploded into blinding light. Tens of thousands of energy blasts raced forward like a burning storm. It was a wall of destruction so massive that the Vigilant Star's windows dimmed automatically. To protect the crew's eyes, the Empire officers watched proudly. To them, this was the attack that had crushed dozens of civilizations, the firepower that made the galaxy fear their name. But the Terran reinforcements did not move. They did not scatter. They did not hide. They simply raised their shields in perfect unison on the Terran flagship. A deep humming echoed across the fleet as their shields activated. The energy barrier glowed faint blue, forming a protective dome around the entire Terran formation. The Empire's attack hit the dome like an angry tsunami. The explosion was enormous. Ryland gripped his chair, expecting the worst, but his ship barely shook. The blast rippled across the barrier, spreading like harmless waves in a pond. The crew looked around in disbelief. We're still here? The weapons officer whispered. The sensor officer stared at the readings. Sir, the fleet shields didn't even drop below 80%. Ryland slowly leaned back. He finally understood. The Empire thought Terrans were hiding greatness, but the truth was different. Terrans were hiding nothing. They were simply ready for the day someone forced them to reveal their strength. Across the battlefield, Admiral Kavos stared at the impossible sight. His greatest attack, one that crushed entire star nations, had barely scratched the Terran defense. They blocked it. He whispered, "All of it." His bridge officers panicked. "My lord, what are your orders?" Kavos's hands shook. He had never faced such a situation, never seen such power, but his pride did not allow retreat. He refused to believe humans could match the Empire. "We fire again," he said through clenched teeth, "until their shields break." Rylan watched as the Empire fleet prepared a second volley. He shook his head sadly. "They don't learn." He opened a channel to the Terran flagship, requesting permission to return fire. The Terran flagship's answer was calm, almost emotionless. "Permission granted. Begin Phase 1 strike." Rylan nodded once. Weapons ready to target the front line. The Vigilant Star aligned its cannons. But this time it wasn't alone. Hundreds of Terran ships prepared their weapons. Energy coursed through their hulls, gathering into focus beams. Rylan raised his hand. "Fire." The Terran counterattack erupted with terrifying precision. Hundreds of beams shot forward like lightning spears, crossing the battlefield instantly. They pierced the Empire front line, ripping through armor, engines, and hulls. The Empire ships didn't just take damage, they were dismantled. Explosions blossomed across their formation like a chain reaction. Rylan watched quietly as enemy ships broke apart. "This war just changed," he said softly, "and the Empire has no idea how much danger they're in." The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the Empire felt fear. The battlefield was filled with drifting flames and broken metal. What was once a powerful Empire front line had turned into a silent graveyard of shattered ships. The Terran counterattack had ripped through them with frightening precision. Even Rylan's crew, who trusted Terran power, stared at the destruction with wide, stunned eyes. The Empire had never suffered a loss like this. On the Vigilant Star, the crew remained silent for a long moment. They all understood the same thing. This was no longer a small border incident. This was the beginning of something much larger. Commander Rylan broke the silence. "Damage report on enemy formation." The sensor officer analyzed the scattered signatures. "Sir, 27 ships destroyed, 11 heavily damaged. The fleet is pulling back to reorganize." Rylan nodded. "Terran fleet status?" "Shield still at 76%. No major damage reported." The crew exchanged glances. They were a single patrol ship, yet they stood inside the protection of an unstoppable force. Rylan sensed their rising confidence, but he also sensed danger. A wounded enemy was unpredictable. On the other side, inside the Empire flagship, chaos boiled across the bridge. Sparks flew from broken consoles. Officers shouted over each other. Smoke filled the air. Admiral Kavos stood in the center, face pale, trying to understand how his unstoppable fleet had been torn apart so easily. "Terran weapons shouldn't be this strong," he said, his voice shaking. "Their ships look old. Their technology should be simple." His communications officer whispered, "My lord, what if the stories were real?" Kavos glared at him. "Stories about humans destroying ancient machines? About them defeating entire invasions alone? Those are myths." A sudden tremor shook the bridge as another damaged Empire ship exploded outside. The officer didn't back down. "My lord, myths don't destroy our cruisers with one shot." Kavos clenched his teeth. For the first time in his life, doubt crept into his mind, but pride wouldn't let him retreat. The Empire had rules. They always advanced. They never backed down from lesser species. He raised his voice. "All ships, form defensive circle. Prioritize shield recovery. Prepare heavy artillery for synchronized strike." The officers hesitated, but obeyed. Empire ships reformed slowly, pulling back into a tight, shield-focused formation. Meanwhile, in Terran space, Rylan watched them regroup. "They're preparing something," he said softly. His second officer frowned. "Shall we move to intercept?" Rylan shook his head. "No, they're scared, and scared enemies make mistakes. Let them show us their plan first." The Terran flagship sent a new message across the fleet. "All ships prepare for Phase 2. Maintain current positions. Await full analysis of enemy counterstrike." Rylan felt a strange calmness in the air. The Terran fleet moved like a single living organism, quiet, patient, disciplined. They showed no aggression unless needed, but Rylan knew what came next would be dangerous. The Empire flagship glowed with red light as heavy artillery cannons extended from its sides. These weapons were rarely used. They were designed to break planets open. Kavos planned to use them against the Terran shield wall. Ryland saw the giant cannons powering up. "That's not good," he murmured. His weapons officer stiffened. "Sir, those cannons can destroy anything in front of them." Ryland stayed steady. "Not anything, but yes, something big is coming." The Empire fleet fired as one. A colossal beam erupted from the flagship, joined by dozens of smaller beams from supporting ships. The combined blast roared across the void, lighting up space like a second sun. The Terran shield wall met the blast with a deep, vibrating hum. The impact shook every ship in the formation. Energy waves rippled like violent tides. Ryland grabbed the railing as the entire Vigilant Star trembled. The lights flickered. Panels sparked. A loud groan came from the hull. For the first time, the Terran barrier visibly strained, shields dropping 60%. 55. 52. The officer shouted. The Empire flagship pushed its power to maximum, its engines glowing bright red from the sudden overload. Admiral Kavos leaned forward, eyes wild. "Yes, break them. Break their shield." The Terran commander on the flagship spoke calmly over the fleet channel. "All forward ships redirect auxiliary energy to the barrier. Maintain formation." More Terran ships shifted closer, reinforcing the front line. Their engines pulsed with power as they poured energy into the primary shield. Slowly, the shield stabilized. The massive Empire blast began to weaken. Inside the Empire flagship, Kavos watched the readings with horror. "There, absorbing the attack," an officer said weakly. Kavos refused to believe it. "Increase power." "We can't, my lord. The cannons are overheating." "Then overload them." "But that could destroy us." "Do it." The cannons glowed brighter to bright. Fire burst from the sides of the flagship. The weapon array cracked under the pressure. Then a loud explosion rocked the Empire bridge. Smoke filled the room. Officers screamed. Kavos fell to one knee as the screens flickered. "Cannons offline." Someone coughed. "We lost control, my lord." Kavos stared ahead at the Terran fleet still standing, their shields shimmering like an unbreakable wall. "No," he whispered. "This is not possible." Back on the Vigilant Star, Ryland watched the Empire flagship burning. "They broke their own weapons trying to break our shield," he said quietly. His crew looked relieved, but Ryland was not. Something about the Empire attack felt desperate, and desperate enemies never stopped at one attempt. He watched the Empire formation shift again. One ship moved forward, larger, darker, different from the others. A new threat. Ryland frowned. What are they trying now? The Empire formation slowly parted as the dark ship moved forward. It was enormous, larger than the flagship, larger than anything Ryland had ever seen. Its hull was black and smooth, without markings, almost like it was carved from a single piece of night. Strange glowing lines ran along its sides, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The Vigilant Star's sensor struggled to read it. The sensor officer frowned. "Sir, this ship isn't in any database. No match, no model, no known signature." Ryland narrowed his eyes. "Then it's something new, or something they kept hidden." The crew stared at the black ship as it drifted closer, stopping right at the front of the Empire formation. The other Empire ships moved behind it, hiding in its shadow as if taking protection under its presence. A cold feeling settled in Ryland's chest. Inside the Empire flagship, Admiral Kavos stood with a bitter expression. Even injured, even shaken, his pride still pushed him forward. The dark ship's arrival brought a strange mix of relief and fear to the Empire officers. One of them spoke quietly. "My lord, the Obsidian carrier has arrived." Kavos nodded slowly, his voice tense. "They sent it. I didn't think the Emperor would deploy such a weapon." Weapons officer trembled. "My lord, that ship doesn't mean the Emperor expected humans to resist." Kavos stayed silent. He did not want to admit it. The Obsidian carrier was a forbidden design, built not for normal war, but for total annihilation. It carried something inside, something not meant to be used unless the Empire faced a true threat. Kavos turned to his officers. "Prepare communication. I will speak to the Terrans before we begin the next phase." Back in the Terran fleet, Ryland's calm officer looked up. "Incoming transmission from the large enemy vessel." Ryland nodded. "Put it on." The screen lit up, showing Admiral Kavos, face bruised and uniforms burnt. His eyes burned with anger, pride, and something deeper, fear carefully hidden. "Terrans," Kavos began, voice sharp, "you have shown surprising strength, more than expected, but you stand in the way of the Galactic Empire. If you surrender now, we will allow your ships to retreat." Resist further, and the weapon inside this vessel will cleanse your territory. You cannot withstand it. Ryland stared calmly at the screen. You invaded our space. You fired first, and now you expect surrender. He said, you have no right to demand anything. Kavos flinched, unused to being spoken to like that. Ryland continued, voice steady. We protect our people. We protect our worlds. And anyone who enters our space without permission must be ready to face what comes after. Kavos' anger flared. Then you have chosen destruction. The transmission ended. The bridge of the Vigilant Star fell silent. Ryland exhaled slowly. Prepare for whatever that new ship holds. The dark vessel began to open. Huge armored plates shifted apart, revealing the glowing sphere inside the ship's core. It pulsed with strange light, bright then dim, like a living object breathing. Terran sensors began to scream warnings. The sensor officer shouted, Sir, energy readings are unstable. It's building power, massive power. Ryland's jaw tightened. What kind of weapon is that? The Terran flagship transmitted a new message across the fleet. All ships prepare defensive formation Delta. This is no ordinary weapon. Brace for unknown impact. Ryland nodded, impressed by the flagship's calmness even now. Terrans had faced many threats in history, ancient machines, cosmic storms, supernova fragments, but this was different. This was a weapon built with intent, purpose, and hatred. The glowing sphere inside the Empire's ship brightened until it was almost blinding. Then a beam shot forward, but it wasn't like normal weapons. It wasn't fire, or energy, or plasma. It was a distortion warping space itself. The beam bent light, cracked the darkness, twisted the stars. The Terran shield wall met it head-on. The entire fleet shook. The Vigilant Star's hull groaned louder than ever. The crew held onto anything they could. The lights flickered wildly. The shield readings dropped fast to fast. Shields down to 40%. 35. Ryland clenched his fists. Ray Root auxiliary energy. Every power line we have. The engineer scrambled to comply. Energy shifted. The ship hummed. The shield stabilized at 29%, but they did not drop further. The Terran flagship sent another message. Maintain position. All ships reinforced with secondary shields. One by one, Terran ships activated their secondary barriers, older, deeper layers of energy that were rarely used. The distortion beam slowed as it hit stronger resistance. Then finally, the Obsidian carrier stopped firing. The Terran shield wall battered, strained. Trembling still stood. The Empire bridge fell silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. They had used their forbidden weapon and it had failed. Kavos stared at the screen with horror. Impossible. Ryland sat on the deck, exhausted but steady. They threw their strongest weapon at us, he said, and we survived. His crew began to understand something important. If the Empire couldn't break Terran shields, if their strongest ships couldn't stand against Terran fire, if their secret weapon did nothing but scratch the barrier, then the Empire was in far more danger than they realized. The Terran flagship transmitted new orders. Terran fleet, prepare phase 3. Disable the Obsidian carrier. Ryland stood up. This is it. We hit back. The Terran warship shifted, forming a spear-like formation. Engines glowed brighter. Weapons charged. The tension rose. And for the first time since the battle began, the Empire began to retreat, but it was already too late. The Terran fleet was ready, and Phase 3 was about to begin. The Terran fleet moved as one united force. Their ships formed a sharp, spear-shaped line, driving forward with silent determination. Every engine glowed with bright blue energy. Every cannon hummed as it gathered power. The space around them shimmered from the heat of their combined strength. Commander Ryland watched from the bridge of the Vigilant Star. As his sensors tracked the Obsidian carrier, its massive dark hull drifted backward, engines struggling to regain balance after releasing its monstrous weapon. They're pulling away, Ryland said, but not fast enough. His weapons officer nodded. Sir, Terran fleet weapons charging. They're preparing a synchronized strike. Ryland felt a small, grim smile form. Terran coordinated strikes were rare. They were only used when the enemy crossed a line, too dangerous to ignore, and the Empire had crossed every line. The Terran flagship transmitted a final message. All ships, target the Obsidian carrier. Aim for the central core. Begin countdown. Ryland repeated the order to his crew. Target central core. Prepare for synchronized fire. The crew's hands moved quickly across their controls. The Vigilant Star's cannons locked onto the glowing sphere inside the Empire's dark ship. The countdown echoed across the Terran fleet. 3, 2, 1. All at once, the fleet fired. Thousands of beams, sharp and bright like spears of lightning, cut across the void in perfect unison. The attack was so bright it lit the darkness like a newborn star. The beams met at one point the center of the obsidian carrier. The impact was immediate. The carrier's hull exploded with waves of fire. Huge plates peeled away, spinning into space. Alarms echoed across the Empire's ships as the shockwaves shook their entire formation. Inside the carrier, systems failed one by one. Lights burst. Metal walls cracked. The glowing sphere at its core flickered violently. Energy leaked out like smoke, spiraling into the void. The Empire flagship watched in horror. "My lord," an officer cried, "the obsidian carrier's core is destabilizing." Kavos stared at the dying giant. He had believed the carrier invincible. He had believed the Empire unstoppable. But now, that belief shattered in front of his eyes. "Evacuate the carrier," he shouted, but it was too late. A second Terran volley hit the weakened ship. The obsidian carrier split down the middle like a cracked stone. A roar of flame burst from inside as the core collapsed in on itself. A blinding explosion erupted, larger than any before. Other Empire ships nearby were thrown away like debris from a storm. Ryland shielded his eyes from the intense light. His ship shook slightly from the blast wave, but the Terran fleet held position without fear. The sensor officer watched the readings and whispered, "The obsidian carrier is gone." Ryland said quietly, "One threat ended, but the battle was not over." The destruction of the carrier changed everything. The Empire fleet panicked. Inside the flagship, officers ran from console to console. "We're losing ships. Formation breaking." Kavos' voice wavered. Ray formed the line. "Hold your positions." But the Empire ships ignored him. Their discipline shattered. Their courage broken. Some ships tried to retreat. Others attempted to shield the flagship. Many simply drifted, lost and damaged. The Terran flagship transmitted new orders. "All Terran ships, advance. Disable remaining vessels. Avoid unnecessary destruction." Ryland nodded. "Terrans don't finish enemies who run," he said, "but we will make sure they can't return." The Terran fleet advanced with silent precision. They fired controlled shots, disabling engines, breaking weapons, shutting down systems, but never destroying ships that no longer attacked, even in war. Terrans followed rules. They only fought to defend their borders, not to conquer. On the Empire flagship, Kavos watched everything fall apart. His greatest weapon was destroyed. His fleet was broken. His pride crushed. "Prepare hyperspace jump," he barked. The jump officer stared at him. "My lord, our engines are damaged from the overload. We cannot jump yet." Kavos slammed his fist against the console. Rage filled him. Fear followed. The Empire did not retreat, but he saw no other option. He turned toward the tactical screen. The Terran spear formation was approaching steadily, their ships glowing with lethal energy. They can't be this strong," he whispered, but they were. Ryland watched as the Empire flagship struggled to pull away. Its engines flickered weakly. Smoke poured from the rear. It was a defeated beast crawling across the battlefield. "Sir," his calm officer said. "Empire flagship attempting retreat." Ryland nodded. "They should go. Their fight is over." Then something unexpected happened. A large explosion rocked the Empire flagship, not from Terran fire, but from inside. Ryland frowned. "What was that?" The sensor officer checked the readings. Her face paled. "Internal overload. Their main reactor is unstable." Ryland felt a chill move through him. The Empire flagship held a massive reactor too big to contain if damaged. If that ship explodes. The officer nodded slowly. "The blast could destroy everything in its radius, even some of our ships." On the Empire bridge, Kavos realized it too. His voice broke with fear. "Evacuate. Evacuate now." But escape pods could not launch fast enough. The reactor's energy pulsed brighter and brighter, like a beating heart seconds from bursting. The Terran flagship responded instantly. All Terran ships pulled back to minimum safe distance. "Begin containment procedure." Containment procedure was rarely used. It involved Terran ships creating an energy field large enough to compress an explosion and redirect most of the blast. But no one knew if it would work against a reactor this size. Ryland took a deep breath. "We have no choice. If we don't contain it, thousands will die." Terran ships moved quickly, forming a circle around the unstable flagship. Their engines roared. Energy beams extended, forming a massive energy web around the Empire vessel. The Empire flagship glowed brighter and brighter and brighter, until the stars themselves seemed to fade. Rylan whispered, "Hold the line." And then the reactor exploded. A colossal sphere of white-hot energy burst outward. Terran ships braced. The energy web strained. The shockwave pushed against them like a tidal wave. Panels cracked. Shields flickered. Engines screamed. But the Terrans held. The blast was contained. Slowly, painfully. The explosion faded, and when the light disappeared, the Empire flagship was gone. But the Terran fleet remained. Exhausted, damaged, but alive. Rylan exhaled slowly. We survived. But he knew the war wasn't finished yet. There was still one final step. A message appeared on his screen from the Terran flagship. "Commander Rylan, prepare for final operation. It's time to end this conflict." Rylan nodded. He knew what came next. At Part 7 would be the final chapter. The battlefield grew quiet after the massive explosion faded. Only drifting metal and dying sparks floated between the two fleets. The Empire flagship was gone, reduced to nothing but dust and twisted fragments. The Terran ships held their positions, forming a protective circle as their systems stabilized. Commander Rylan leaned back in his chair, finally allowing himself to breathe. The Vigilant Star shook from the aftershocks, but the lights stayed steady. His crew sat silently, exhausted but alive. The comm officer looked up. "Sir." "Message from Terran High Command." "Put it through," Rylan said. A calm, steady voice filled the bridge. "Commander Rylan, your bravery and your crew's actions have protected Terran space. But the conflict is not over. The remaining Empire ships are retreating. We cannot allow them to regroup and return with a stronger force. Prepare for final operation. Push the enemy out of Terran territory and force surrender." Rylan stood. Understood. The crew listened closely. They all felt the same thing, relief mixed with determination. They had survived the worst attack the Empire could unleash. But now they had to stop the war from spreading further. Rylan looked at the map. The remaining Empire fleet had scattered, some ships running in small clusters, others moving alone into deep space. Their formations were broken, their confidence shattered, their leaders gone. For the first time, the Empire looked afraid. Rylan turned to his officers. "Open a channel to the enemy fleet." The comm officer hesitated. "Sir, are you sure they'll respond?" "They will," Rylan said. "They have no choice." Moments later, a shaky hologram appeared. It was an Empire captain, face pale, uniform torn, sparks behind him from a damaged bridge. "This is Commander Rylan of the Terran fleet," he said calmly. "Your flagship is destroyed. Your weapon is gone. Your invasion failed. We do not wish to destroy you. Stand down and no more lives will be lost." The Empire captain lowered his eyes. He looked tired. "Defeated, our admiral, our chain of command. Everything is gone," he whispered. "We have no orders. You have one now," Rylan said. "Retreat beyond Terran borders. Do not return. Do that, and we will let you go." The captain hesitated, then bowed his head. We accept." The transmission ended. The Vigilant Star bridge fell silent again. The crew looked at Rylan with something more than respect, something close to awe. He had done what many thought impossible, forced the Galactic Empire to retreat. But the operation was not finished yet. The leftover Empire ships needed guidance, or they would panic, scatter, and harm innocent regions as they fled. The Terran flagship sent new instructions. All Terran ships, escort the Empire vessels to border line. Ensure compliance. No hostile action unless provoked. Terran ships moved out, forming large wings on both sides of the battlefield. They guided the damaged Empire ships like shepherds directing a broken flock. The Empire vessels drifted quietly, weapons cold, engines weak. Their crews, realizing the truth, Terrans had held back more strength than they ever imagined. As the fleets moved toward the border, Rylan watched the stars shift around them. His crew began repairing damaged systems. The sensor officer cleaned blood from a small cut on her forehead. The engineer wiped soot from his uniform. No one celebrated yet. They knew the real victory was not just destroying the enemy, it was ending the threat completely. Finally, after long minutes, the two fleets reached the edge of Terran space. The border line shimmered on the map, a thin arc of blue light, marking the protected frontier. Terran Command sent the final orders. All Empire ships are to cross now. Terran fleet, hold position until all enemy vessels have exited. The Empire ships moved slowly past the border. When the last vessel crossed, the Terran fleet came to a halt. The Terran commander on the flagship transmitted one final message to the Empire. "You ignored our warning. You entered our space with fire and pride. You attacked without reason. Yet we will not destroy you today. Leave now. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them what humans truly are." Silence filled the comm channel. Then the Empire captain responded, voice trembling, We will never forget." The Empire ships turned, engines flickering, and slipped far into the darkness of space. Their once proud fleet faded away, leaving behind only silence. The moment they disappeared, Terran Command sent its last message, "Operation complete. All Terran ships return home. Stand down from battle protocol." A wave of relief spread across the vigilant star. The engineer let out a long breath. "It's over." The weapons officer leaned back in her chair. "I can't believe it. We fought the Empire, and we won." Ryland smiled faintly. "We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we defended our home. That is the Terran way." But something still lingered in his mind. Something important. He turned toward the viewing window. The borderline shimmered gently in the distance. "Let this be a lesson," he said quietly. "Not just to them, but to the entire galaxy." The crew looked at him. Ryland continued, "Humans do not seek war. We do not seek glory. But if anyone crosses into our space, we will stand together. We will protect our worlds. We will fight not out of pride, but out of duty." The crew nodded slowly. They understood Dot as the Terran fleet turned and began its slow journey home. The darkness of space felt peaceful again. The battle debris drifted silently. The stars shined quietly. The danger had passed. But across the galaxy, in the halls of the Galactic Empire, fear spread. Their leaders would learn the truth. Their citizens would hear stories. Rumors would spread like wildfire. Stories about a small Terran ship that destroyed 3 cruisers alone. Stories about shields that could withstand impossible weapons. Stories about a fleet that moved like a single unstoppable force. Stories about humans who warned the galaxy, Terran space is off limits. And stories said the Empire ignored that warning and paid the price. As the vigilant star moved toward home, Ryland watched the stars ahead. The war was over. Humanity remained safe. And the galaxy would never forget what happened here.